On today's plate of history beans, I'd like to take a bit of a diversion from the usual stuff about the American Old West and look at the first modern Olympic Games, which were held in Athens, Greece in 1896. There are ways this is pertinent to my usual discussions about the Old West, but I think I'll try something new in hopes it might encourage a few more comments. So here's a question, and hopefully some of you will respond below. What is there in the Olympic tradition that is similar to or otherwise related to stories about the Old West? Think that over and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. The first modern Olympics began on April 6, 1896 and ended on April 15th, 10 days later. Around 240 athletes, all men from 12 nations, competed in those first games. There were 43 events covering track and field, cycling, swimming, gymnastics, weightlifting, wrestling, fencing, shooting, and tennis. Those first games were considerably more informal than what we call the Olympics nowadays. The first games were privately funded mostly by the legacy of a Greek businessman named Evangelos Zappas, pardon the pronunciation of all of these names, and his cousins Konstantinos Zappas and Frank Averoff. The Zappas family had hosted previous games called the Zappas Olympics in 1859, 1870, and 1875. Those first games were only open to Greek athletes and athletes of Greek origin from the expansive land known at the time as the Ottoman Empire, which encompassed the current-day Balkan states, Turkey, Syria, Iran, and other parts of the Middle East. The 1896 Games were the first truly international Olympics, but there was still a decidedly Greek flavor to the proceedings. The opening ceremonies to those first games were held in the restored Panathinaik Stadium in Athens. The stadium is a marvel of ancient architecture and was first built as a racetrack around 400 BC. It was later expanded into a venue built for 50,000 attendees in around 144 AD by Herodes Atticus, a Roman senator. When Christianity took over and the Roman Empire split into the Western and Byzantine empires in the 4th century AD, the site of the Panathinaik Stadium was abandoned and for many centuries became a wheat field. It wasn't until 1869 when the Zappas family restored the stadium for the first Zappas Olympics that the Panathinaik Stadium returned. The stadium underwent a more extensive restoration before the first Olympics in 1896, and the Zappas family installed wooden seatings for 30,000 spectators. That first competition, though much smaller than today's Olympics Games, was still magnificent. The International Olympic Committee, IOC, founded by a Frenchman named Pierre de Coubertin, decided the most appropriate place for the Olympic Games would be in Athens, Greece, where the ancient Olympic Games had been held 1,500 years in the past. The Panathinaik Stadium, with the Acropolis on a nearby hill, hosted an estimated 50,000 for the opening ceremonies. I wish I could have been there to see it. Most historians agree that Greece is the cradle of Western civilization. Certainly that alone lends the proceedings with some relationship to what we call the Old West. Let me remind you of my question for the comments section. What relationship, if any, do the ancient Greek games have to do with our American Old West? There are no wrong answers. I can only imagine those opening ceremonies with the crowd cheering as athletes from Europe and the United States stood in the center of the stadium as a group of 150 singers performed the Olympic hymn composed by Spiridon Samaras. That music has appeared in several consequent Olympics and has been a part of the opening ceremony since the Squaw Valley Winter Games in 1960. I'll forego the usual plate of beans music at this point and play the tune for you right now. This is what attendees at the current Paris Olympics would have heard just a few days ago as part of those opening ceremonies. The group of competitors at those first games weren't, for the most part, sponsored by nations. Only Syria had a state-sponsored group. The athletes, though they represented their countries, were mostly wealthy Europeans or Americans there on their own dime. 4 years later, in the 1900 Olympic Games in Paris, there were a good many more state-sponsored athletes. The first Olympic medal awarded in 1,500 years went to an American named John Connolly in the triple jump. That first Olympics, athletes were awarded only silver for first place and bronze for second. Later, the IOC would rename those winners as gold medalists, with second as the traditional silver and the addition of a bronze medal for third. Greece won the most medals in those first games with 47. The U.S. came in second with 20. The U.S. dominated the track and field events, but perhaps the most dramatic story from those Olympics came from the marathon event, which ostensibly followed the route of the original marathon run by Phidippides during the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. The gold medal in the marathon for the first Olympics went to a Greek athlete named Spiridon Louis, a victory that earned him eternal fame with the Greek people. As in all Olympic competition, there were many great stories, acts of heroism, really. I'll have links below if you want to know more. That's all for today's Plate of History Beans. As always, if you like my content, I hope you'll hit the like and subscribe buttons. If you're following my book hunting charm, I'll also put a link to my author's page on Amazon. Now it's time for chapter 26 of my novel Hunting Charm, Advice Through a Hearing Trumpet, here on the Contemporary Old West channel with B.F. Biles. Chapter 26, Advice Through a Hearing Trumpet. Theo had experienced failure in his younger years. When Doreen was born, they hardly had 2 nickels to rub together. Life had kicked his tail a few times, but Theo had been full of energy and stupid enough to keep trying. 25 years earlier, the decision to spend his last $200 on an old farmhouse and a set of corrals on the outskirts of Abilene, on the rumor that the railroad would be coming through, had been as much about luck as business acumen. 5 years after he moved himself and Ruth into the rundown place, he learned the Pacific Railroad was not only coming to Abilene, but would run right alongside the road less than 100 yards from his corrals. Theo had already been operating a small stockyard and auction house. He had been doing okay, catering to ranchers and breeders in the area, organizing short drives to Topeka. When the railroad arrived, however, within 2 years, his business had grown exponentially. He suddenly had more money than he knew what to do with. He had not counted on the loss of Doreen causing him such pain. When the Baylor brothers returned and reported that his daughter was dead, it felt like a bull kicking his backside. Following the bad news, work still consumed his days, but the enjoyment, the sense of accomplishment disappeared. The relationship with Delilah Henry grew stale. His life that had felt settled seemed out of kilter. He started spending most evenings at home, brooding, napping, and gazing abstractedly at some bit of paperwork as Ruth reclined in her chair, feet propped upon a settee, content in her world of brandy, laudanum, and literature. During those evenings, and at other times during the day, Theo's mind wandered back, recalling times his daughter had been a ray of sunshine. Doreen's tantrums, infidelities, and willfulness faded, replaced by memories of her childhood, a time when they had been inseparable. When she was 5, Doreen had loved spending time with him. Their days started with breakfast at a local cafe. Theo would drive them around the stockyards in his 2-seater, proudly displaying his princess for all to see. Their afternoons on sale days were spent at his auction house, where men shouted out bids on all manner of livestock, and his sweet girl listened intently as he explained the finer points of judging animals. Following Doreen's disappearance and reported death, it hadn't taken long for Theo's memories to take on a burnished quality, like a filigreed silver teapot, with his daughter's misdeeds providing a mere hint of contrasting tarnish. Hardly an hour passed without a snort to clear his throat, or a subtle dab with his handkerchief to wipe away a bit of wetness at the corner of an eye. His precious jewel was gone forever, never to return. Along with the old memories came the hollow sense that without an heir, all his work and success meant nothing. He had been hoping that Doreen would eventually find a husband and there would be grandchildren. Now, however, he knew that would never be. Ruth was too old to have another child. Why hadn't they had other children? He wanted to blame his wife, but couldn't summon the dishonesty to hold her accountable. Ruth had expressed the desire for a second child, but he had lost interest in their relationship. In the year or two following Doreen's birth, he increasingly spent his evenings in the room previously called his study. Evenings became entire nights, time he spent looking over paperwork, the reams of regulatory information, accounts payable and receivable, anything to avoid his own bedroom. He also began seeing whores. At first his infidelities were sporadic, but grew gradually in frequency. When he met Delilah, a woman 20 years younger than his wife, he began staying out almost every night. During that time, Ruth said little. At first, she wasn't sure what was happening and spent evenings sitting alone in the parlor. When she spoke with Theo, their conversations took on a cold civility. A relationship that had once been substantial melted and cracked like an iceberg, the two halves drifting gradually apart. Ruth to her books and brandy, Theo to the stockyards and Delilah Henry. During that time, he never contemplated the changes in their marriage. In his mind, he still loved Ruth and even felt put off by her rude and sometimes demanding questions. Theo had never been one to examine his own faults. Self-examination rarely walks hand in hand with success. His business grew immensely during those years. The stockyard had always been a source of steady income, but for a time, when Abilene occupied a place of geographic centrality in the Great Central Plains, profits grew astronomically. Abilene became a wild place where huge herds of cattle rolled in every day, driven there by bands of young men anxious to spend their newly earned dollars in local saloons and brothels. Over 5 years, 2 locomotives a day, each with 15 cattle cars attached, rolled between Abilene's and points west and north in service of Theo's stockyards and auction house. During that time, Theo spent a good deal of money, but Claude Hallam managed everything, and for every dime Theo spent, the solid manager banked $1. Theo, meanwhile, built a great home for Ruth and Doreen and accumulated enough investments and other securities to call himself, without exaggeration, one of the richest men in Kansas. In the days following Doreen's death, when sadness finally led to a few introspective moments, Theo realized in a vague way that money, his success, had probably saved his marriage. Had he been a normal man with an average income, Ruth would surely have left. She had threatened to do so more than once. "My family in Virginia will have me back any time. This isn't seemly or natural, you with your whores, spending all your time drinking and smoking at the club." But he paid little attention. What did he care about what was or wasn't seemly? He wasn't the first wealthy man who didn't follow the rules, and wouldn't be the last. The other wealthy men Theo knew all had mistresses, and they all had wives at home who, to one degree or another, wasted away on a sofa or chaise, sipping brandy and reading novels, dreaming of a ghostly Heathcliff to spirit them away. During those times, Theo spent lavishly on Doreen, buying her anything she desired. His daughter would point a finger, and the purchase would be made. In truth, he had done something similar for Ruth. He hadn't begrudged his wife money, though now, given the circumstances, his generosity, even to him, seemed petty and disingenuous. His willingness to cater to Doreen's every whim and Ruth's attempts to salve her loneliness with finery had led to his daughter's spoiled nature and his wife's dissipation. If only he had been a bit more affectionate with Ruth. It wasn't as if he disliked her. Theo still regarded his wife as the most sensible woman he had ever known, a woman far above himself in terms of intellect and character. Indeed, Theo knew he could never have created his empire without Ruth. Now, however, with Doreen gone and Ruth fully accustomed to the distance between them, a crumbling awareness of age and death crept in. Theo looked at Ruth seated a few feet away and realized the distance between them had grown too great. A sense of emptiness settled into his bones. Along with his brooding angst over past mistakes, another emotion brewed within him, one that manifested itself mainly at work. Theo had always been a man prone to anger, but it had never been much more than a barking sense of annoyance, a snapping of orders, or a quick rebuff. Now, however, his normally acerbic management style took on a razor's edge of outright meanness. Before Doreen's disappearance, Theo knew that many of the corral hands joked about his daughter's sexual indiscretions. After her disappearance one afternoon, he overheard a conversation between two of the pen writers about a sexual encounter with a barmaid at the Pennyback. Theo, thinking the men were talking about Doreen, became furious. He spent nearly 5 minutes berating the two cowpokes on their moral conduct, then summarily fired both. Claude Hallam was so disturbed about the firing, he did something he almost never did and questioned Theo about the decision. "Old Buck's been with us nearly 20 years, Hallam said. "He's one of your oldest hands and a damn good cowboy." "I don't give a damn if he's worked for half a goddamn century. I fired the man for moral decrepitude, and that's final. A feller who speaks like that of a lady ain't fit to work at the Tarwater stockyards." "Well, yes, sir. Thing is, Buck came to me," said the cowboy who was talking with, I don't know, Smitty, maybe. Anyway,
Buck said Smitty was just talking about a saloon gal he met the other night. He wasn't talking about Doreen. Buck ain't the kind to talk that way anyhow. He says he was just standing there listening to Smitty. Buck has a wife and 4 daughters.
Theo paid no attention to Hallam. Instead, his rage boiled over, and without thinking, he began ranting at his trusted foreman.
God damn it, Claude, the cowboys can't go around talking about women in such a way. Now I reckon if I can find new pen writers, I can also find a new man to sit up there in the office and push that pencil around. I suggest you get back to work before I send you down the same road I sent Buck and Smitty.
Later that evening, sitting in the parlor gazing at the walls, Theo realized he should apologize to Claude Hallam. He owed much of his success to his stoic manager. Even so, the next day he felt too ashamed to face Claude and said nothing. Finally, 2 days later, Hallam entered with the payroll checks.
"Here's the payroll,"
Claude said, placing the stack of checks on Theo's desk.
"God damn it, Claude, I'm sorry."
Hallam stood for a long moment, then pulled a wad of tobacco from his pocket and seated himself. For perhaps 2 minutes, nothing more was said. Theo fumbled with the checks, then began to weep quietly.
"I didn't think I'd miss her so,"
he said. "She was a good girl when she was a child. Sweetest thing in the world. You two was mighty thick."
"She turned into a goddamn whore, Claude."
"No, sir. No, she was just spirited. She favored her daddy a good deal."
"I spoiled her. I gave her everything she wanted, and she turned bad."
Another long pause ensued as Theo continued signing the checks while Claude blotted. The stack took nearly 20 minutes to complete. As he placed the last check on a corner to dry, Theo said,
"I reckon old Buck's still in town?"
"Yes, sir. I heard he's been at the Pennyback emptying spittoons and such.
A man with 4 young'uns can't be out of work long. You find out where he's at and get him back over here. Cut me a check for his full month's wages."
"Yes, sir."
"And if you can find that other pen writer, Skinny or Scrappy or whatever the hell his name is, hire him back on too. I reckon he learned his lesson regarding the proper way to behave in my presence."
Hallam nodded once more, then gathering the checks, left the office. Following the encounter, Theo felt relieved, energized even. He suddenly felt the desire to visit Delilah Henry. That evening he enjoyed a lively tumble with his mistress, but the following morning the dark clouds returned. At one point during his revelry, he recalled the fancy cowboy detective he had hired 6 weeks earlier to track Doreen. Had that dandy taken the $200 in expense money and simply gone home? He could recall the feller saying he hailed from a town over near Dodge, some little prairie duster that, now that the Indian Wars had settled down, might turn into an actual town. Theo thought about the handsome cowboy and found himself smiling at the man's good humor and easy ways. He instructed Claude Hallam to pull the contract.
"You think he's still on the trail?"
Theo asked, reading through the terms of their agreement.
"He sent a telegram about 10 days back saying he hadn't found anything definite yet. Said they were headed for Indian territory where Johnson lives."
Hallam replied,
"You figure there's a chance he might catch Johnson? How long do you think it's been since he rode out of here?"
6 or 7 weeks.
"You figure he just took that money and ain't even going to try to find Johnson?"
"Well, I heard those 2 are straight shooters. He's got a partner, another feller that does the gunslinging, while Matt does all the mental work.
Hang on just a second.
Hallam left the room for a moment, then returned with a pair of tattered books. Have you read these? Hallam slid the dime novels across his desk. Theo picked one up, gazing at the corner. The title, Devil's Trade Wind, did little for Theo, but the artwork caught his attention. The cover depicted a pair of cowboys, one standing among several Indians, some living but most dead or dying on the ground, the cowboy's gun smoking. The second cowboy sat astride a horse, a double-barrel shotgun in one hand, extending a hand to a child who lay tied near a campfire.
I heard there were a couple of books written about these men. Fact is, you told me that when we first looked to hire someone to go after Doreen.
Theo thumbed to the first page of the book.
Mind if I take this with me? I don't usually do much reading. You say them fellas are straight shooters?
Well, I reckon the author spiced things up some, but if half of that one is true, then I reckon them boys have a reasonable chance of finding the man who killed poor Doreen. Take both books. I've read them a couple of times. That evening, Theo didn't return to the saloon. Instead, he sat in his increasingly familiar spot opposite his wife, engrossed in the first of the two books.
Have you found something to read?
Doreen asked.
Yes, I was reading up on the men I sent out after Doreen's killer.
I've read that book, Ruth said.
This one here?
Yes, in fact, those copies you're holding may be the same ones I lent to Betsy Hallam.
Claude gave me these books this morning.
Ruth chuckled. Perhaps she didn't mention to Claude that she had borrowed the books from me. Since those have the paperboard covers, I probably told Betsy to keep them.
How come you didn't give them to me?
Theo, I don't recall seeing you ever read anything except a contract or bit of paperwork from the stockyards. I didn't think you would be interested.
I'm interested in anything that has to do with Doreen coming up dead.
Do you miss her? A long pause ensued. Theo felt tears well in his eyes once again, as he had done several times each day for the last 6 weeks. Memories of Doreen as a little girl came back.
I do miss her some,
he said. Another pause ensued, then Ruth said, I thought I would miss her more, but I'm not sure I believe she's dead. I thought I would feel it in my bones somehow if she died. Probably just silly, but I feel she's alive.
What do you mean?
Theo asked. Well, you sent those stupid brothers out after her. Don't you recall the doctor saying something about how that boy, what was his name, the one who lost his arm and finally died?
Baylor. Bart Baylor.
Yes, don't you recall how the doctor said the Baylor boy was raving in his sleep about how he'd seen Doreen and how she was still alive?
Yeah, I reckon so.
My dear, isn't it possible that his ravings were the actual truth? I mean, honestly, I don't think those two fat boys saw Doreen at all. I think this Baylor fellow's babblings were just a guilty conscience manifesting itself on his deathbed. Theo, baffled by his wife's logic, sat quietly for a long moment.
I don't get how you figure that leads to Doreen being alive.
As I said, I would know if my daughter was dead. Do you recall how the doctor also said Bart was mumbling about how he forgave his brother, forgave him for shooting him?
I don't recall that.
Theo's voice trailed off. Well, you may not have been there for that conversation. Isn't it possible those boys were simply concocting a story to cover their incompetence? I wouldn't be surprised if they did something horrific to the Johnson family and then lied about Doreen. Honestly, we can't even be certain she went with Johnson in the first place. Everything those Baylor boys said could be a lie.
I think you read too many of those damn detective novels. What about Doreen's undershirt?
If I'm being honest, I'm not certain that rag was hers, and in fact it seems unlikely. The thing was made of cotton. I was terribly upset that day. Theo blinked. Was it possible Doreen was still alive? He had spent the past month trying to come to terms with her death.
You lied about the undershirt?
I was upset. A wave of dizziness struck him as if something in his world had changed significantly. Examining his surroundings, everything remained in place. The grand clock purchased from Germany for his small fortune, stately paintings of European castles, furniture in the French style, Persian rugs, mirrored wall sconces, and a ridiculously expensive bronze chandelier. What did any of it mean? Theo realized he had enjoyed good fortune. Yes, he had worked hard, but others he knew had done the same. None of them had achieved his wealth. Why him? Why had God, or whatever power that might exist, chosen him? And why did his wealth bring him so little pleasure? Why did he feel so goddamned miserable? Up until that moment, he had felt Doreen's death was a sort of reckoning, a balancing of accounts for his undeserved success. But what if Ruth was right? He wanted to believe it. Still, how did a man like him, uneducated and coarse, deserve such great fortune?
You think she's still alive?
Theo, the entire thing seems preposterous. Ruth loved using large words he couldn't understand.
What the hell is preposterous, or whatever the hell you just said?
It means ridiculous. It's ridiculous to simply assume she's dead based on the word of the Baylor brothers. Despite her bad behavior, Doreen is a resourceful girl, and the notion that she was kidnapped. Must I remind you of the dozens of times she threatened to catch a ride aboard the wagon of some horse trader passing through? Is it such a shock that she finally did so? Conversely, does it seem likely that a rancher would drive his stock into Abilene, sell his animals, then, upon leaving town, kidnap the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in Kansas? The Baylor brothers claim that she was kidnapped to satisfy the man's lust is asinine. Doreen left by choice. It is quite likely she is now resting comfortably, or more likely not so comfortably, in some dusty town or camp. She spoke of taking up whoring. You must recall that. You switched her more than once for such talk. Theo recalled Doreen's threats to become a prostitute. She had said it dozens of times. He bristled, then barked.
My daughter is not working as some cheap trail hand whore. That much I know.
Suit yourself, dear, but I believe Doreen would be quite successful, fleecing cowboys of their hard-earned gold. A prostitute may be a lowly regarded profession, but for a woman such work presents one of, if not the only viable path to independence. Theo felt the urge to rise from his chair, rush to Claude Hallam's home, and order his manager assemble a cadre of men to fan out and cover every inch of the vast Indian territories. Immediately, though, he understood the folly of such an action. He already had men out looking, or at least the pair of cowboys.
But the damn undershirt, I mean, you're sure it wasn't hers?
I would have to look at it again. Ruth sighed. There may be some shred of truth in the Baylor's story. You met Johnson. Would you consider him the kind to kidnap a white woman?
He's a black man, proof enough. Plus, I didn't actually meet him, not so I remember.
Don't be such a coarse idiot, Theo. The man's color has nothing to do with it. The truth is, he was responsible enough to breed livestock. You paid him in gold for the fruits of his labor, probably more money than he'd seen in his lifetime. Does it make sense that he would then kidnap Doreen as he rode from town with a wagon loaded with goods? Theo bristled at Ruth's condescending tone. Even so, he recognized the truth of what she was saying.
Why the hell didn't you say something about this sooner?
Ruth looked at him for a long moment, closing her book. In that moment, Theo realized his wife was still a handsome woman. The years had added something, strength of will perhaps, a sense of dignity. She spoke with quiet intensity. Theo, when is the last time we had a conversation beyond a cold hello in passing? Honestly, I believe entire weeks go by without a word between us. You ask me now why I haven't spoken sooner, your neck muscles bulging and your brow engorged with indignation. Ruth laughed, a short, terse ha. Perhaps I'm sorry I said anything, for you see, despite your absence, for years I longed for moments when the two of us would sit quietly here in the parlor, hoping for a return of the bond that we once shared. My foolish romantic notion, yet in the past few weeks my dream has become a reality. Here you are, night after night, sitting across from me. Still, things haven't changed significantly, have they? We haven't shared anything. During this time, despite your proximity, we simply sit in silence. The distance between us has remained fixed, a gulf of indifference between us, unabridged. Theo felt slightly annoyed by his wife's flowery speech. Her probing gaze felt like an indictment for some crime he could not name. How could one manufacture feelings one didn't feel? How did one guess what another might be thinking? He had never been the type to look beneath the surface. Why waste the time when simply moving forward had served him so well? Ruth, he said, unsure of how to proceed,
I don't understand all of what you're saying. I understand that we haven't been intimate for a long time, but...
Yes, that's it. Ruth waved a hand, nodding in disgust. Theo sensed his failure, but stumbled on.
I never meant for you to hole up here and spend every night reading, and
Theo stopped, realizing the hollow nature of his excuses. A long pause passed. Ruth stood, folding a page corner, placing her book on a side table. She walked unsteadily into the kitchen. The house girl, already in her quarters for the evening, always left coals in the stove in case Ruth wanted a cup of tea before bed.
Ruth, come back,
Theo called to her. She heard him and felt a pang of sadness, but didn't respond. Adding a few sticks to the stove, she started the kettle, then gazed out the window at the neighborhood. Their home, built of brick, by far the largest in town, dwarfed the modest structures surrounding it. She told herself she had no right to feel despondent. When Theo called a second time, his normally robust voice sounded sincere. She placed the kettle on a burner and turned for the living room. She would go back and try to talk a bit more. Perhaps Doreen's death might serve a purpose after all. As she pushed through the kitchen doorway, a familiar wave of dizziness struck her. The brandy and laudanum eased her mind, but she had been trying to cut back. She had been feeling unusually weak lately, at times so unsteady that rising from her chair, even for the privy, could be a chore.
"I'm going after Doreen," Theo said as she entered.
"And which direction will you go?" She felt disappointed at his comment, though she couldn't pinpoint why exactly. What did she expect? A pain knifed through her temple, and she placed a hand on the back of one of the dining table chairs, steadying herself.
"South to Oklahoma Territory. I intend to visit Cecil Johnson's place. I want to see for myself what transpired there. I intend to find her."
Theo spoke the words as if they had profound significance. In recent years, her husband had once been so earnest and fun-loving, had become controlling and self-important. She had seen it in his relationship with their daughter. Ruth rubbed her temple, thinking guiltily that she didn't care much either way if Doreen returned. Their relationship had never amounted to much. Doreen had always been her father's girl. Yes, there had been some affection between them in early years when Doreen would sit quietly in her mother's lap for a story or perhaps a lullaby, but Doreen had never been a clingy child. "How long will you be gone?" Her voice sounded distant in her own ears. A second wave of dizziness struck her with such force she felt she might collapse.
"I have no idea. Could be a matter of a few days, but like as not, it will be gone for a couple of months. If she is alive, I intend to find her, and if that feller Johnson can be found, I intend to do what needs doing. Are you okay?"
Ruth nodded, pulling herself upright. The wave of dizziness had migrated to the pit of her stomach, and her head pounded. She stumbled to her reading chair and bent forward for the laudanum that rested on the floor, hidden behind the chair's fabric skirt. Before she could grasp the bottle, however, everything went black. She collapsed to the floor. At first, Theo was unsure of what had happened, thought his wife had tripped over the edge of the rug. He rushed to her side, noting that even in her state of collapse, her eyes remained open. After a moment of indecisiveness, he rushed out the back door and shouted up to the girl in the second-floor carriage house apartment. He began hitching Ruth's carriage, a process that consumed nearly 10 minutes. Upon re-entering the house, he found that Ruth had come too. He noted that one eye focused on him, but the other stared off at an odd angle. When he spoke to her, she moved her mouth, but only a few unintelligible sounds came out.
"I'm taking you to the dock."
With the help of the house girl, Theo gathered his wife and carried her through the back door. A moment later in the carriage, he wrapped an arm around her limp form, holding her tightly as he sped down the boulevard, whipping the roan pony, the buggy strobing in the intermittent gaslight. Arriving at the doctor's office, he spent an anxious moment pounding on the door, wondering if he might need to drive on to the whorehouse where the doctor often spent his evenings. Eventually, though, Doc Williams appeared, unshaven and groggy, drunk, cracking the door.
"Who the hell is it?" Theo Tarwater, my wife's fallen sick. Now open the dang door, you old bastard.
Theo, who often spent evenings carousing with the doctor, generally referred to Sam Williams as the old bastard.
Damn it, Theo, what the hell? It's the middle of the night.
Williams pulled the door wide open, admitting Theo with Ruth in his arms.
It ain't even 10 o'clock.
Theo rushed through the waiting area and directly into the doctor's examining room, where he placed Ruth onto an examining table.
What happened?
The doctor followed closely, fumbling his spectacles.
She just fell, went out like a light.
Williams started his examination, rolling back Ruth's eyelids, peering intently into the pupils. An instant later, he grabbed a small box and lit a candle, which he placed inside the device.
Sit her up,
the doctor said as he doused the table lamp. For nearly a minute, Doc Williams moved the glowing box near Ruth's face, opening and closing a small aperture that admitted a beam of light into each of Ruth's eyes. Eventually, he stepped back, placing the box onto a counter, then struck a lucifer and reignited the lamp.
Let her rest, Williams said. Put her into that bed.
In addition to the examining table, Doc Williams kept a small infirmary for patients requiring special care. After moving Ruth onto one of the beds, the doctor led them into his living area. Motioning Theo to a well-stuffed couch, Williams poured 2 drinks from a crystal decanter. Theo, anxious for his diagnosis, said,
What the hell's wrong with her?
Williams handed Theo the glass, then settled into a chair. After taking a couple of sips, a look of consternation in his eyes, he said,
The news ain't good, though she may not die. What the hell does that mean?
The doctor let out a soft sigh.
She's had a stroke. What the hell's a stroke? A blood vessel in her brain is burst. It's something called apoplexy. There ain't much can be done for her, though. I've seen people recover.
The explanation did nothing to alleviate Theo's frustration. He slugged down the glass of whiskey.
Can't you open up her head and fix things? No, sir. That would kill her. There ain't a doc in the 50 states could do a thing for her. She might just as well be headshot.
Theo sat in silence, stunned by the news. Once again, a sense of anger enveloped him. Ruth's illness couldn't have occurred at a more inopportune moment. What of his plan to ride out in search of Doreen? How could he leave town now?
Is she gonna die?
Theo stood, walked to the liquor cabinet, and began pouring himself another whiskey.
As I said, not necessarily, though I'd say a good percentage do. I have no means to investigate your wife's head to determine the extent of the damage. She may awaken in the next few hours, or she may be out for good.
Theo felt his body sway. Fortunately, the doctor stood quickly and guided him back to the couch. Williams said something else, but Theo, in a daze, didn't hear.
Well, what's that, Doc? I said you need to sit still, and no more whiskey for now.
Theo stared absently at the glass in his hand.
So you figure Ruth might never wake up? Well, why don't you just give her a nudge? She's not sleeping, she's in a coma. Well, what the hell is a coma? It gives the appearance of sleep, except a patient can't be awakened. They may awaken on their own, depending upon the severity of the stroke or other head injury. So she ain't sleeping? No. Are you sure, or are you just guessing? I'm sure she's not sleeping, Theo. I've seen apoplexy strike many times.
Williams paused for a long moment, sipped his whiskey, then continued.
Do you know Mr. Parley lives over in the south part of town?
Theo thought for a moment, then nodded. Parley was an odd duck, crippled, dragging one leg along, slurring his words like a drunk.
Mr. Parley had a stroke some years back. As I say, some folks recover, though it's important you understand in cases like this one, where the individual succumbs to coma, the prognosis isn't good. Ruth may awaken naturally in the next few days. Like as not, though, she will remain in a state of coma. In such a state, she will eventually die without the ability to hydrate and, well,
the doctor's voice trailed off. He could see Theo was no longer listening. The men sat there for the next half hour, chatting, then sitting in silence. Eventually the doctor dozed off. Theo went back into the examining room and seated himself at Ruth's bedside. A half hour later, Williams entered, straightened things, looked in Theo's direction, and said he was going to bed. Theo had never been a religious man, though he did attend church on a regular basis. Usually he drowsed through the Lutheran preacher's dogma-laden sermons. He never prayed, except before meals or when called upon by one of the men at social events. In short, he had never had much faith in God. Even so, as often happens at such time, Theo prayed. Kneeling at his wife's bedside, he asked for Ruth's recovery. Despite the loss of affection in their marriage, with the recent disappearance of Doreen and now this, he felt deeply troubled. The world, which had seemed so neatly arranged a few weeks earlier, now seemed about to tilt completely off its axis. It occurred to Theo that he might also pray for Doreen, so he added a line or two. Ruth had felt their daughter might be alive, and now, with his wife's sudden illness, more than ever he wanted to believe it. He remained in the infirmary through the night, sleeping in the second bed. The following morning he went briefly to the stockyards and tried to distract himself with work. There was nothing to do, though. Claude Hallam took care of everything, and his office felt oppressive, so he wandered outside. Before he even had time to breathe, however, 3 different employees approached with questions, so he fled back inside and wandered into his manager's office. Claude spoke of checks to be signed, contracts to be drawn, meetings, lunches, social calls, and the usual list of daily chores. During their discussion, for the second time in the past week, Theo began to cry. Claude listened to Theo's description of the previous night, expressed shock he had even come in for work, then insisted Theo return home. So Theo went back to his house, where he watched the maid dusting and cleaning for a half hour. Bored with that, he fled to his bedroom and tried reading more from the novel about the 2 cowboys, but their adventures grew tedious after only a few minutes. He tried to nap, but had never been one to nap. Finally, he went back to the doctor's office, where he remained the rest of the afternoon and evening. Sitting there by Ruth's side, he recalled their early years together. He thought of a time when they were affectionate with one another and the best of friends. She had been his true partner, and in those days they had spoken often of what they hoped to accomplish together. Even though money had been desperately short at times, there had been a sense of accomplishment and family. In retrospect, despite his later success and all they had now, those had been the happiest times. If only he had known then, perhaps he might have spent less time driving himself to reach his goals and more time focused on the things that truly mattered, like his relationship with Ruth and Doreen. Funny how he had forgotten the bond they once shared. How had they drifted apart? Why had he acted so foolishly, indulging his lust with Delilah Henry, drinking and carousing, while the most important people in his life faded into the background? He mentally cursed his own selfishness and, despite his lack of faith, prayed again, this time for a second chance to make things right. Doreen, he now decided, must be living a desperate life, prostituting herself with a string of two-bit cowboys in a filthy prairie saloon. He thought about Delilah Henry, her blazing red hair and rough sensibilities. He had fun with Delilah, no denying it. Still, he couldn't imagine installing her into the parlor as his new wife. He cringed at the thought that Doreen might become like his mistress, crude and hardened, swilling liquor and guffawing at tasteless jokes. For 2 days he remained at Ruth's bedside, dozing fitfully in the second infirmary bed. The second night, in his dreams, the handsome cowboy detective appeared. The man said something about Doreen, though Theo couldn't quite make out the words. In the dream, Theo pulled a comically gigantic hearing trumpet from somewhere and placed it to his ears.
"What's that you're saying?"
Theo's words echoed in his nocturnal parlor. The cowboy detective seated himself in Ruth's chair.
"Get on your horse and ride,"
the answer came.
"She's across the river."
He awoke with a start, a shaft of early daylight trickling through the window. He rolled over and almost fell from the narrow infirmary bed. With a start, he realized the doctor stood only a few feet away, examining Ruth. Theo placed one foot on the floor and stood, his mind muddled by the odd dream. Williams shifted slightly and cleared his throat.
"She didn't make it through the night,"
he said. At first, the words didn't fully register.
What's that?"
Theo asked.
"I came in about 5 minutes ago. I reckon she passed sometime during the night. I wasn't sure if you knew or not. She looks good, peaceful."
Theo's head pounding, pulled himself to his feet. Ruth lay there, an odd smile on her face. Theo realized the doctor had misread his wife's expression. He recognized the look. It was one he hadn't seen in years. His wife didn't look peaceful. She looked happy.
"I'll go over to the funeral parlor in a bit," Doc said. "Still a little early for Charlie. You go home. I'll send word to the stockyard you won't be in for a few days."
Theo started to protest, but then nodded. In a daze, he left the doctor's office. Outside, his carriage remained hitched to the rail. The horse appeared to be sleeping, its head leaning on a crossbeam. The animal snorted slightly when Theo took the reins and turned the rig onto the street. He drove back home along the dusty manure-spotted road, past the row of clapboard houses, and into the winding drive leading to his mansion. Inside, the house girl said nothing when he entered the kitchen and poured himself a cup of coffee.
"I'm going to bed. Miss Tarwater passed last night."
"Did you say Mr. Tarwater had passed last night, sir?"
"Yes."
Oh, my. Oh, well, I'm very sorry to hear it. Will you be wanting breakfast?"
"I'm going to bed,"
Theo repeated. The world could survive without him for a few days.